Welcome to the Outdoor Adventure Lifestyle Podcast, where we dive into inspiring stories, thrilling adventures, and expert insights from leaders and legends across the outdoor adventure travel community. Whether you're an avid hiker, passionate paddler, or adventure traveler, each episode brings you up close and personal with guests who've lived it, explored it, and made it their mission to share their experiences with you. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or app of your choice. Be sure and share the episode with a friend, and we'd love a rating or review. Let's get after it. Melissa Rodway has spent years living the kind of life most people only dream about. Her book, The People You Meet, captures everything from wild bus rides to those unexpected, sometimes bittersweet connections that stick with you long after the journey ends. And it even landed on Amazon's bestseller list. Hey, Melissa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Rick. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's good to talk with you. You look like you have a photo behind you, a nice little marsh with a trail, probably great birding.
Yeah, this is from Prince Edward Island. It's a small province in Canada, and I had the very good fortune to go there last year. So it's also a reminder that there's adventure in your own backyard that we have still to discover. I'd never been, so yeah, beautiful part of Canada.
Yep, good reminder. Great point, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you grew up in a small town in Ontario. How did that environment shape your curiosity for the wider world? Did it make you want to go explore a lot?
I think I had a dad I know I had a dad who, he'd also come from another small town and moved, when he got married, moved to the town that we grew up in, and just always kept saying to us, there's life everywhere, it doesn't stop in this town. And when I was young, like 7, he took us to Australia for a year, and we spent a year in an even smaller town. Like, I wouldn't even call it a town,
Wow.
in the middle of a rainforest. So at a young age, I really learned that there's life everywhere. And I think that kind of kicked it off for me.
Very cool. Was he an explorer himself?
Yes and no. I mean, he stayed in our small town, but he's certainly seen a lot of the world. So yes, he's been a big traveler, but he's also really loved, having his roots, I would say.
Yeah, it's always good to be home. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your family spent a year in Western Australia when you were young. How did that experience influence your sense of adventure? That must have been awesome.
Yeah, so it was 1981, and we did a teacher's exchange. So my dad was a teacher at a high school, and we swapped houses and jobs with another family. And it was, yeah, quite something. I mean, I'm the youngest of 3, and we cried when we found out that we had to go, and then we cried when we had to come back.
Yeah.
So we quickly adapted. We had accents. We went to a school that was in the middle of a rainforest, and we had to walk a pretty wild path to get there. And, that was 1981, so there was no helicopter parenting. And my parents rented a van for part of the year, so we traveled around a lot of Australia. We went to New Zealand, and we went to Bali, where there were no tourists at that time.
Wow.
So I would say that was a pretty big experience to have when you're 7, and that kind of, again, shows you that there is a world of adventure out there.
Yeah, my parents took us to all the national parks. They love to go camping and stuff, so that was a good way to get indoctrinated to it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've had some amazing experiences, from trekking in the Alps to paragliding in Nepal. Is there one that fundamentally changed you or the way you explore?
I don't know if there's ever one. I think they accumulate. I think the more you do, the braver you get, and the more open you are to trying new things. I mean, there's certain things that I think about more often than others, but if I can be totally honest, I mean, yeah, I've been very lucky. Traveling is a real privilege, so I've been very lucky to see and do a lot. But one of the best things that I ever did was that I spent 5 weeks just living in Quebec City in Canada in the winter. I love winter. And that was just a beautiful time where I didn't have any social life. I mean, I maybe met like 1 or 2 people that I hung out with maybe once or twice. And I was on my own, and I just every day did something wintry, skiing, skating, snowshoeing, whatever it was. And I went to a Nordic spa 3 or 4 times a week. I read books, I watched Netflix, and that was my life. And that was one of the best things I've ever done outside of all these wild worldly adventures. That's the one I think about the most often.
Yeah. Probably just got to go deeper into some of those places you hadn't been before. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Do you think adventure travel means something different as we get older?
Definitely. And to everybody. I mean, adventure is not the same for you as it is for me, as it is
Hmm.
for the person across the road. So I think for me, it's changed in my priorities. Back in the day, even when this book, The People You Meet that I wrote about, I was more of just like hanging out, seeing things on the move, which was fine. I loved it. But now my priority is hiking, cycling, paddling, doing something active. That's really my purpose for adventure travel these
Hmm.
days.
Hmm.
And I think we're seeing more of that where people are finding a purpose within their travels. It could be doing something in a community. It could be chasing a dream of like music or art or
Hmm.
whatever it is. I think people are
Yeah.
finding places to explore their passions in. And I do think that that is something that evolves with travel as you get older, for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you learn about more about yourself and what travel means and what these places and people mean, and you want to go back and get more similar experiences, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And what's a place you visited that completely surprised you?
I'd say Jordan,
Mm,
probably. I went to Jordan in 2020 because it was right before COVID happened. I remember being on the plane and people were wearing masks. This was literally like days before.
yeah,
And we were like, what's happening here?
yeah, it was weird. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I think, I had never been to the Middle East and I had no idea what to expect. And the people were so extremely kind and generous. And I felt very safe. And it's an incredibly beautiful country. And I just felt very at home there. And you don't always feel that in certain countries. And it has nothing to do with what is going on there. I think we are all either have a natural sense of belonging to a place or we don't. And
Hmm.
that's a very interesting topic in itself.
Yeah,
But I didn't expect to feel that I would feel so comfortable and welcome and at home. And just it felt very natural for me to be there. So I really
interesting.
love Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah, and some places you get excited to go to, and you go there, and it's kind of like, this wasn't what I expected.
Well, it's interesting that, and I have experienced that many times. Even in the book that I wrote, The People You Meet is about Southeast Asia and China. And if you talk to most people, they will rave about Thailand and that part of the world. And absolutely, there are many reasons to rave about it. It is incredibly beautiful. The food is amazing. It's cheap. Well, it's probably not as cheap as it used to be, but that part of the world is just a gem. But for me, I loved it, but I didn't feel that same sense of belonging that I have when I go to maybe Latin American countries. I feel a
Mm, mhm,
real I can breathe differently. I
mm,
feel way more relaxed. There's something about those places. So yeah, I think I did interview. I used to have a radio show about travel, and I did have a guy on my show who delved into all these worlds, and he was big into past lives. So we talked about this quite a bit, and he
mm.
said, in his belief system, it's when you go somewhere and you feel a connection, it's because you've lived there in a past life. And if you don't feel it, then it's because either you didn't spend enough time there in a past life or something terrible
Something
happened to you.
happened. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
That is
Huh. Yeah, I've
fascinating.
felt that a lot of places. That's why I feel so connected to Bishop. We were talking earlier before we turned the mic on. It just feels like home to me. And
Yeah.
I've been going there a lot of years, but that's probably why. But
Yeah.
so what's one misadventure that turned into a great story later? Probably have a lot of these
Oh,
stories. You could do a whole
plenty.
book on that.
Well, I did. So, yeah, it's in the book. Part of my title, the title is The People You Meet, but the subtitle is Luxury, Leeches, Love, and Lao Lao. So there's obviously a story about leeches in there. So the story there is that we were in northern Lao and when you're traveling, I think people think that you are getting a ton of exercise every day. And sometimes it is the complete opposite. You're
Right.
like on long haul buses and trains, and it can
Yeah.
be actually very stagnant in terms of physicality. So I was really itching to do something. So we went on this 3 or 4 day hike in the jungle. And when we signed up for it, I mean, granted, we'd had a couple of beers before we signed the waiver, but they said to us in very terrible English, they said, there could be some leeches, there might be some bees. And we were
Mm.
like, come on, it can't be that bad. And it was really horrifying.
Yeah.
So just horrifying with like leeches all over, crawling all over you
Oh.
for multiple days. There was, I think, 6 of us, like from all over the world. And the guy in front of me had tennis shoes on and shorts,
Ooh.
which
Ooh.
was really dumb.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, like the backs of his legs were just covered in blood because he'd
Yeah.
have like 6 leeches on each leg at any given time. That was a terrible time, but it has made for a very good story.
That would be a good story. I'm sure I've been somewhere where there were leeches, but I've never experienced leeches, knock on wood.
Yeah, this was like a horror movie. I've
Oh,
never
God.
seen anything like just crawling along the ground, dropping out of trees, like they were everywhere.
Yeah, I can't imagine. That's gotta be wild.
It was awful.
So your memoir, The People You Meet, grew out of emails you wrote while traveling. How did
Yes.
those eventually evolve into a book?
The
Was it
thing
just
is,
natural, or did you have to?
well, what happened is that on that trip, I was on like my stint was 4 months. My partner was there for longer, but he was working in the luxury travel industry and was wanting to create a future business. So we went to that part of the world because he wanted to research some routes and meet some people in that world and connect with hotels, etc. So when you are with somebody who has a purpose and you are just there as the plus one, which we had done a lot, but
Uh-huh.
not for months on end, it's different. And
Yeah.
I needed something. So I just started creating these stories in my head about what I was seeing and doing and the people and the places.
Mm,
And this was 2010, so we didn't have phones at our disposal. So
right.
once a week, I'd find an internet cafe and send these emails out to people with these stories. And
Mm,
then, long story short, I decided 15 years later to edit them and dust them off and turn them into a book. And here we are.
great idea. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
cool. I can't look forward to reading it.
It's a great book. Yeah.
Yeah. And was there one character or encounter on those travels that sticks with you today?
There's a few,
I'll
but
bet. Yeah, usually there are a couple.
yeah, there was one woman who I met, and she was in her 50s. I was like 35 at the time. She was very, very well traveled, the most interesting person I'd ever met
Mm,
to this day.
wow.
And was traveling with her daughter, who was like 10, and her daughter was so well traveled too. Like she knew more than most people 3 times her age at that point about how to get around. But she was just very interesting because she taught me about knowing when it was time to go home. We were in Laos waiting for, I think, a ferry to come take us to a village. And she was watching these 2 young girls who were traveling and just looked at them and said, you know what? They need to go home. It's over. And I had never heard anyone talk about that before.
Yeah.
So she taught me about travel fatigue and
Mm,
ego and knowing that it's okay to go to end something. And
mhm,
because
mhm.
there's a lot of competition, on the road about, I've been here longer, I have more stamps, I've done this, I've
Right,
done that.
right,
It's really
right.
stupid.
Yeah.
And there comes a point where you're done and you're over it and you've hit the wall, but a lot of people keep going for
Mm,
bragging rights, and it's to the detriment of everybody as well as the
mhm, mhm.
country that you're in if you outstay your welcome.
Yeah.
So that's something that I have really dialed into. And on that trip, the same thing happened to me. After 4 months, I
Mm.
knew I was done.
It was over,
And
yeah. Well,
thankfully, I had the knowledge now and the awareness to leave.
yeah, yeah, that's interesting. That makes sense, though. I think I've been in that spot as well.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes you're there, but you can't get home, right? It's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
gotta get out of here." Yeah, interesting,
yeah,
yeah.
it's really hard.
Travel memoirs often balance humor, vulnerability, and reflection. What was the hardest part of writing yours? Was there
Well,
a hardest part? Maybe it was
the
all pretty
hardest
easy.
part is selling it, but,
Yeah.
the hardest part of writing it, well, I mean, these are chapters of your life that you're revisiting that sometimes, depending on where you're at now, it's not for the faint of heart, to
Mhm.
revisit
Mhm.
relationships. And I think, with age comes wisdom, and you can look back at your decisions at 35 and say, "Oh, I wish I could have helped you."
Right.
So I think there's a bit of that, but I think the hardest part is the vulnerability when you put out a memoir. I mean, the first 3 weeks of it being published, I literally felt sick to my stomach because you think, what have I done? Have I said too much? Have I overshared?
Uh-huh.
I'm a very honest, transparent person, and this book is full of honesty and where I'm at, and I don't really pretend anything. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's a part of you that's just like, "Uh-oh," but, it was well received, so I got over that pretty quickly, but that's one of the hardest parts for sure.
Yeah, I bet it helps when it's well received. I'm sure you're
Yeah.
kinda, like, second guessing yourself sometimes if
Oh,
that
big
doesn't
time. Yeah. Yeah.
I do that on the podcast all the time. "Oh, should I
Yeah.
really ask that question?
Yeah, totally. It's
That
that's
might have been
being
a little
human.
too deep." So you host the Fly Travel Radio podcast. What inspired you to start telling travel stories through interviews and a podcast?
Well, it started as a radio show and it's on hiatus at the moment, but what happened is when I came back from that trip in 2010, I had quit my job, so I had nothing. I came back and had to rebuild, which was,
Mm,
that's also not the fun part.
right.
And, I had always wanted to get into radio and just, went left instead of right back in the day. And then I learned that if you go to a community radio station, you can actually learn all these amazing skills. And so I did that. And lo and behold, I created my own show for about 6 years. And it eventually morphed into a podcast. But it started because I couldn't travel for a long time. I didn't have
Mm.
any money. So that was the way to travel through other people. I built a really interesting network and got to meet fascinating people who were doing really off the beaten path stuff. And yeah, it's always a huge interest of mine, the travel world. So that's how it started, and it was amazing. I mean, just the things you can learn through other people are quite fascinating. That was an adventure in itself,
I bet,
just like
yeah.
learning how to broadcast and all of that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. That's, a lot of people think it's simple, but, once you
Mm.
dig into it, it's like, no, I didn't know anything about audio, and it was learning curve.
Tons of work. The best part is what you're doing right now is the
Right,
interviewing, the
right.
meeting people, and the research. The rest of it is really tough, and nobody knows that till they do it.
Yeah, it can get pretty tedious at times, yeah. So after talking with so many travelers, have you noticed any common themes about why people travel?
I think everyone is out there for their own reasons, but I think for me, I would say in my observations of others, I think we love the unknown. I think when
Mm,
you have I have a pretty normal life. I'm a 9 to 5er, and then I have just really figured out how to build travel in around my life. I've been very fortunate. I worked somewhere where they let me take a year off, and
yeah, yeah.
so that. But I think there's some real authenticity to your character when you are like, you have no idea what's gonna happen every day. You can think but it's never what is actually going to happen.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
being in the unknown, you're way more aware, you're way more living in the moment. I think, we're not very present when we're in our normal lives because we can predict quite accurately what the day will be. But
Right.
when you're on the road, you are very in the moment, you're very much alive, you're very much feeling everything. And there is something to that is very addictive. So I think that's part of it. And I think that, again, it's the people. You don't know who's coming across your path, what opportunities they may or may not present. It's just fun, it's a world where the rules are maybe a little bit different for some parts of your life, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can feel like you're a different person. I think that people like the way they feel when they're traveling.
Mhm.
I don't think I'm the same person traveling as I am at home, that's for sure.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, more adventurous traveling, sure. More adve
yeah,
and sometimes I think when you're traveling, you wake up and you're ready to go and explore, and other days you wake up and go, "I don't wanna go anywhere."
yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's important too. I mean, I think there's a real, as we were saying earlier, there can be a real belief that every day you're supposed to seize the day and do it
Right,
all.
right.
And I have a friend who's been traveling consistently for 15 years. She's a digital nomad, and I learned from her that, if you 1 or 2 nights a week you're at home watching Netflix, then if you're on a long haul trip, 1 or 2 nights a week on the road, you should not be doing anything either. Like,
Mhm,
you
mhm.
should actually build in more normalcy than we think. There's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves, but you can only take in so much,
Yep,
like,
yep,
you need to have those moments of just normalcy.
yep, 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 need some quiet time. I
Mhm,
agree 100%.
mhm.
What makes a truly compelling travel story, do you think? Does it have to have adventure?
No, I think, adventure can be it doesn't even have to be about going away. Adventure can be something that happens to you on your way to the grocery store, to be honest. I
Right.
mean, I think I think storytelling is huge with adventure or with, like writing about these sorts of things. Humor is very important, but I think it's being human. I think relatability is the key. And fortunately, I'm sort of built with that. I have nothing to hide. And I think the more we share our vulnerabilities and insecurities and honesty, the more relatable we are. And you can make that really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes people feel less alone,
Mm-hmm.
in the world. And I think those are the ingredients for me anyway, to telling great stories of travel and adventure.
And those are the things that connect us humans, right? When you share
Exactly.
your adventures versus with somebody else who's had similar and different, you learn more about them. Yeah, that's well put. Yeah. Do you think adventure can exist just as easily close to home as it does on the other side of the world? We talked a little bit about this, but
Totally. I've had moments where I question why I go anywhere else in the world. I mean, Canada, just like the States, is a very beautiful, richly diverse geographical
yeah,
place.
yeah.
And there's so much here that I haven't seen. I've seen quite a lot, but there's a ton of Canada that I have never seen. And anytime I see any part of Canada, I think we have it all here. Why do I need to spend money elsewhere? But
Hmm.
I don't know. I think we're just compelled to find these adventures. But certainly, I mean, I think we all experienced that during COVID, where people were exploring their own backyards and realizing how much joy you can get even sometimes from like a road trip or like a day trip somewhere. I
Yeah.
think I think sometimes we think it has to be grandiose, and you can get as much joy and satisfaction from something locally as you can from anywhere else. I think it's as important.
Yep, I agree. Yep, 100%. What's one travel item you'd never leave home without?
Sunscreen.
Good one.
Yeah, big believer in that.
Yeah, sunscreen and a big floppy hat's added to
Yeah,
my kit now
same,
too.
same. I don't care what I look like. Yeah.
That's right. I don't care how dumb it is. I'll play Mr.
Mhm.
Magoo for the day, whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
Is there anything else you'd like to say or ask of our listeners before we wrap up?
No, I think just my message is always that travel is for everybody, adventure is for everybody, and I think some people feel like there's an age limit on that, and I think that's really silly. I have
Mhm.
traveled with people in their 70s, in their 80s who have more energy and are more curious and more nimble than people that are in
Yep.
their 20s.
Yep.
And so that should never be a barrier, and people can start small, they can start big, just I think any type of adventure is really important to being a human being. So discover what that is for you and what it means for you and go for it. I think it's a really vital part of being alive.
Agree 100%. Well, it's been great talking to you. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, Rick, really nice speaking with you too. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Well, maybe we'll meet at a travel conference somewhere.
Sure, that would be great.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.